Did the Las Vegas Aces truly earn their win over the Indiana Fever, or did the referees gift it to them? When A'ja Wilson racks up what seems like countless uncalled fouls, from moving screens to elbows and blatant shoves on Lexie Hull, it's hard not to question whether we were watching basketball or a carefully managed production.
Only A'ja Wilson could get away with this. Look at this. And ESPN called this a highlight. You could clearly see both feet come off the ground and land again. That's illegal. And let's check this out. Like, this is first grade stuff. The refs, of course they miss it because it's A'ja Wilson. She's dribbling, touches it with two hands on a spin move, gathers it, and passes to a teammate. And watch this at travel. That's her pivot foot. Like, this is some Angel Reese type stuff. Like, 3 in 1 game? That's horrible.
In this breakdown, we're revealing the full story. From Wilson's stat padding and the glaring free throw imbalance to the missed calls and questionable whistles that transformed a hard-fought Fever effort into an officiating controversy. Many fans are calling it a stolen series. And once you hear what Lexie Hull said afterward, you'll understand exactly why. Share your thoughts below about A'ja's so-called special whistle.
Trying out for an offensive lineman position in the NFL. And then look it, if you don't want to be pissed off, don't watch this. In overtime, a moving screen with 2 minutes left, and this is the biggest shot of the game. After foul.
How does one player seem to have her own personal rulebook while everyone else is expected to follow the real one? That's the question hanging over this entire semifinal series. When you compare the numbers between A'ja Wilson and Aliyah Boston, the pattern stops looking like coincidence and starts feeling like orchestration. Across 5 games, Wilson strolls to the free throw line 26 times. 26. Meanwhile, Boston, who fights for every rebound, takes contact in the paint, and gets hammered on nearly every post-up, makes it to the line only 17 times. And here's the kicker. Nearly half of those came in a single game, Game 4, when the Aces resorted to intentional fouls in the final minute just to burn the clock. Take away that desperate sequence, and the free throw gap between Wilson and Boston becomes downright indefensible. Now rewind to Games 1 and 2. That's where things turn downright absurd. Aliyah Boston, the Fever's defensive anchor and arguably the most skilled post player in the league, didn't shoot a single free throw in either matchup. Not one. Watch the footage and it's obvious. Wilson was getting whistles for phantom contact, light grazes, incidental bumps, while Boston was taking heavy hits in the paint with no call in sight. How do you explain that? You can't. This isn't about contrasting play styles. It's about selective enforcement. The offense flowed through Boston all night, yet the officials acted like contact vanished the moment she had the ball. 2 straight games without a single trip to the line isn't randomness, it's preference. And the foul stats only make it worse. Over 5 games, Boston was whistled for 19 fouls, while Wilson drew just 14. That's a strange imbalance when you consider who was actually playing defense. Boston spent nearly every possession guarding Wilson, contesting drives, absorbing elbows, and staying disciplined. Wilson, on the other hand, often switched onto smaller players to conserve energy and rarely challenged Boston head-on. Yet somehow, Boston ended up with more fouls. How does that make sense?
And look at these moving screens. She totally destroys Lexie Hull. And guess what? They get a 3-point bucket off that play. They didn't call that an offense foul. Look at this one. Do you see how she sticks her leg out? They wonder why they get wide open layups and 3-pointers. Look at the room it makes when you set an illegal screen. That's why it's illegal. Another one. Look at this. She moves over and it's just enough time for her teammate to get a 3-pointer off. Watch how she does this. She thrusts her hips at the end. Look at it. Thrust her hips to get that extra space, and she gets an open layup. Like I said, 4 offensive fouls they didn't call, and they got 10 points.
Rewatch the film, and it becomes impossible to ignore. Wilson was setting moving screens like it was part of her playbook, shuffling her feet, swinging her hips, and throwing shoulders into defenders to spring Jackie Young or Chelsea Gray free. Multiple analysts who reviewed the footage counted 37 uncalled moving screens from Wilson over the series. 37. That's nearly 8 per game, and not a single whistle. Meanwhile, Boston could barely set a routine pick without getting penalized. The double standard was so obvious you could feel the frustration radiating from the Fever bench. The game turned into a one-way street, fouls stacking up on Boston while Wilson glided through untouched. Boston kept her hands high, played disciplined defense, and still got called. Wilson, on the other hand, dropped shoulders on entry passes, hooked arms on rebounds, and plowed through defenders without consequence. You can label it tough officiating if you want, but at some point, it stops looking like oversight and starts looking like protection, the kind designed to preserve a narrative, not the integrity.
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm, it's about timing, it's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us from doing it.
And they kept us from doing it. And that's the uncomfortable question no one at the WNBA office seems willing to touch. Is the league's self-anointed superstar being protected? Because based on this series, Wilson's so-called special whistle isn't fanfiction, it's backed by evidence. Look at the numbers from top to bottom. 0 free throws for Boston in the first 2 games. 17 total to Wilson's 26 across the series. 19 fouls called on Boston versus just 14 on Wilson. And 37 documented moving screens from the MVP that went completely uncalled. Every statistic, every clip, every missed whistle points in the same direction. A pattern of preferential treatment that's impossible to ignore. And it's never the Fever who benefit. When you line those stats up against what unfolded in the clutch moments of Game 5, the story shifts from suspicious to downright outrageous. That's when the favoritism stopped hiding in the numbers and started influencing the outcome right before everyone's eyes. It wasn't just about missed calls anymore, it was about how those whistles shaped the final score. The Fever didn't lose because they played poorly, they lost because every time they built momentum, the officiating pulled them back. And when Lexie Hull spoke out about what she endured guarding Wilson, the elbows, the off-ball shoves, the moving screens that were never called, fans started to realize this wasn't a one-off officiating blunder. It looked like a pattern, a protection plan, and the Fever were on the wrong end of it. Game 5 was supposed to be a showcase. 2 generational talents, Aaliyah Boston and Aya Wilson, battling for a trip to the finals. Instead of a classic playoff duel, fans got a 3-hour tug-of-war between the Indiana Fever and the referees. The night that should have decided who was the better player ended up revealing something else entirely. Not competition, but control.
So we got a 4-point game in the middle of the third, and this is an offensive foul, right? That's what the refs say. This is how fair the WNBA is, but this is not a moving screen. That was way worse. And not only that, it led to 3 points and called this a foul on the Fever. This fourth quarter in a 4-point game. Oh, it gets worse. In overtime, a moving screen right in front of everybody. And then guess what it leads to? A 3-pointer in a 2-point game with 2 minutes left. Another moving screen. Instead of calling this a moving screen on A'ja Wilson, they call a foul on the Fever. I can't make this crap up.
The first jaw-dropping moment came midway through the third quarter. Boston set a screen at the top of the key. Clean, solid, feet planted like a statue. It was textbook basketball. Then came the whistle. Offensive foul. Moving screen, they said. But the replay told a completely different story. Non-shuffle. No lean. No advantage gained. Just a perfectly legal play erased for reasons no one could explain. Even the commentators went quiet, a silence that said more than any words could. That phantom call didn't just cost the Fever a possession, it flipped the entire rhythm of the game. From that moment on, Boston had to move cautiously, second-guessing every play, knowing one more invisible foul could send her straight to the bench.
WNBA. Oh, you mean A'ja Wilson's on the opposing team? It's all starting to add up and make sense. You have to cheat to win basketball games.
Then came Megan Gustafson's Oscar-worthy performance. Boston caught the ball in the post, turned into her move, and Gustafson flew backward like she'd been launched from a cannon. The slow-motion replay told the truth. Minimal contact, barely a brush. Yet the whistle blew anyway. Another foul on Boston. 2 questionable calls in quick succession, each one chipping away at her rhythm and confidence. Suddenly, the physicality that defines Boston's dominance became a liability. She had to pull back while Wilson kept charging through defenders untouched, racking up free throws like frequent flyer miles. And then came the clincher. Late in regulation, Boston boxed out perfectly under the rim, arms up, feet set, flawless position. Jackie Young nudged into her, stumbled, and somehow Boston was the one whistled. Foul number 6. Disqualified. Just like that, the Fever's anchor was gone, not because she was outplayed, but because the whistle decided the outcome. The scoreboard was tied, the tension was electric, and the Fever's defensive anchor was stuck on the bench watching her team's season slip away. The arena should have erupted in playoff chaos. Instead, it sank into stunned disbelief. Without Boston, Indiana's defense unraveled, and the Aces wasted no time exploiting the gap. What made it all sting even more was the contrast between the two stars. Boston stayed disciplined, contesting shots without fouling, maintaining composure even as the calls stacked against her. Wilson, meanwhile, leaned on the whistle to fuel her offense, drawing contact, exaggerating reactions, and heading to the line like clockwork. Fans noticed. Everyone did. Social media lit up with slow-motion clips, side-by-side comparisons, and frame-by-frame breakdowns of every questionable call. Those 3 moments, the phantom screen, the flop, and the rebound foul, didn't just influence Game 5, they decided it. One of the league's most disciplined defenders wasn't beaten by Aya Wilson, she was beaten by the officiating. And somehow, the Aces still had the audacity to celebrate it like they'd conquered adversity. What do you call it when the team that benefits from every single whistle suddenly starts playing the victim? You call it the Las Vegas Aces playoff strategy. Because that's exactly what unfolded after Game 4, when Aya Wilson, standing at the podium with the composure of someone who'd gotten every call all series, had the audacity to claim that the series was rigged. Let that sink in. The same player who'd spent 4 games practically living at the free throw line was now insisting she was the one being targeted. Through those 4 games, Wilson had 19 free throw attempts to Aaliyah Boston's 15, even though Boston was the one absorbing the constant contact, the body blows, and the no-calls in the paint. Yet somehow, in Wilson's version of events, she was the victim to the victim.
So while you're looking at that box score, I'm wondering what's really standing out to you there.
I was just looking at the fouls. Like, Liz had 5, Jackie had 5, Chelsea had 5. And that's very interesting to me because I'm not saying we don't foul. Yeah, we foul here and there, but that's very interesting.
The irony is almost insulting. Through the first 4 games, Wilson racked up 12 fouls, Boston 14. And that's not some cherry-picked stat. That's while Boston was taking on the toughest defensive assignment of the entire series, guarding Wilson one-on-one nearly every trip down the floor. Meanwhile, Wilson was out there setting moving screens that would make a football coach blush, and the refs couldn't seem to find their whistles if you handed them a map. Flip the script for a second. If Boston so much as brushed a guard on a pick, an official would sprint across the court, arms swinging, ready to call it. But when Wilson does it, silence. Play on. Nothing to see here.
I gotta go back and look at the tape, but it seemed like there was a lot of grabbing and holding down there. That got called one way.
Anything else?
I did appreciate it was a little tighter called, but tighter on both ends would have been nice.
And it didn't stop with her. Becky Hammon, the Aces head coach, jumped right on the same bandwagon. In Game 4, she picked up a technical foul after unloading on the officials, yelling as if the entire basketball universe were conspiring against her team. And it wasn't some isolated moment of frustration either. The Aces have turned that behavior into part of their identity. Whenever the pressure mounts, they unravel, pointing fingers at the refs, the media, or anyone willing to listen. It's a clear pattern: deflect from their own mistakes, play the "we're being targeted" card, and dare the officials to overcorrect. It's not passion, it's emotional manipulation dressed up as competitiveness.
I feel like this game, between the adversity but also the resilience, was just like a microcosm of this whole season. And did that, in a way, like, you're like, oh, we've been here before.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Steph said in the huddle. Like, we're built for this moment. When Kelsey went down, and then we're challenging the call on AB. We've been here before, so it's just so unlucky, so crazy that had to happen tonight.
That's what made Wilson's post-game comments so transparently tactical. It wasn't raw emotion, it was strategy. A calculated move, perfectly timed before the decisive Game 5. She knew exactly what she was doing, planting a seed in the officials' minds, making them second-guess every whistle that might favor the Fever. And wouldn't you know it? It worked like a charm. In Game 5, the officiating swung so far in Vegas's favor.
But if the WNBA wants any credibility left, it owes the fans an answer. How 37 uncalled fouls robbed a young contender of its rightful shot at glory. Let us know down in the comments what you think of Aja's special whistle. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.